People who have been straight up fired on the spot. What happened? Chef here. Got fired because I sent a steak out that had char on it. The only char on it was grill marks. Okay lady, you probably just saved me a huge mess. I worked at a meat market deli. It was my first day in the deli section, and with very minimal training, my supervisor just decided to take off for some crap. Well, that didn't stop customers coming in. One guy was unhappy that his cheese wasn't cut properly, as it was like my third time using the cutting thing, and complained. That's all it took. I handed my boss my 2-week notice and she ripped it in half and said, "Don't bother, you're done today." HQ wasn't too thrilled with her decision as they had to pay me a severance because of her hatred towards me. Worked at a call center, telemarketing. It was my grandmother's birthday. We didn't hit sales quota for the day. The boss told me I had to stay until we hit. I told him family was more important. Got fired immediately. Best decision ever. I came back to my summer job at an amusement park from missing 3 days with strep throat, handed in my doctor's excuse, and was fired for missing work. Apparently to call off you couldn't just talk to a manager, you had to talk to the department head, a person I had never met with a phone number that had never been made available to me. Because I missed more than 2 days, it didn't matter that I had a note because I was considered a no-call no-show. The assistant manager I gave my excuse to handed me a letter back that said I had 10 minutes to clean out my locker and vacate the premises or they'd call the cops for trespassing. I was 16, in a state with very liberal employment laws, and my mom retained a lawyer. I didn't win any money but they ended up having to list me as rehireable in their system and they paid a huge fine for essentially making it impossible for employees to call in sick. I was told Friday out of nowhere we won't be needing your services anymore after being told in November I would have a position into next year at the minimum. So that's a fun holiday gift. Same. Let go day before Thanksgiving after 5 years at a company and negotiated my new raise with substantial documentation of my worth to the company. I was replaced almost immediately and suspect my raise was given to that individual. This wasn't me, but I witnessed the following. I worked at a camera store many years ago and we received a life-size cutout of Andre Agassi, the tennis player, who was promoting Canon cameras. We set up the cutout in the store but our crotchety owner came in, didn't like it and told us to throw it out. So we put it away, but when the owner went out for lunch, we took it back out and proceeded to take a few goofy pictures in front of it. Then we put it back away. When the owner came back from lunch, he returned to his office and then 5 minutes later came rushing down the stairs red-faced and screaming. We had forgotten about the security camera and his secretary had snitched on us. "I told you to throw that thing out," he screamed. He then went into the back room, dragged Andre out, and started trying to tear the thing apart, bending the head back and forth. That cardboard is pretty tough though, and he was not strong guy, so he just stood there for 30 seconds furiously struggling with it. We were all trying to hold it in, but one of my co-workers couldn't help it and started laughing at the absurdity. Our owner heard it, whipped around and screamed, "You're fired. Get out of my store immediately." We were all shocked, but the guy picked up his jacket, walked out, never to be seen again. That's pretty funny. I was fresh out of college at an IT contract to hire job. I came in on a Tuesday, sat down at my desk, the boss owner came up behind me and told me I was fired. I sat there, mouth open, and then asked why he said that I was not a good fit for the company and that I had to leave. So I gathered my things and he stood there watching me, probably making sure I did not steal anything, and escorted me out of the office. I found out later that because of the size of the company, at the time, they were looking for a tier II worker, but I was a tier I. I told them this in the interview, but apparently they did not have the resources to train me. Well, joke's on them. I went through a month of unemployment and I found an even better IT job where I make a lot of money and work only half as hard as that job. Well, that worked out well. I told my manager at a fast food place that I was going to be looking for a new job and to not schedule me after this pay period. The next week, I see my name on the schedule and ask her what the deal is. "I told you I was going to get a new job and not to schedule me." "Well, did you get a new job yet? Number. But I'm still not sticking around this one." "Well, you know what? You can just not come back here now with that attitude." She sure showed me. The exact opposite of you can't fire me, I quit. Fired a person for disappearing on their first day of work for a couple of hours. We worked in a manufacturing plant and he took off to try to find some cute girl he knew that worked there. The guy was married and he asked, what am I supposed to tell my wife? I said, probably not the truth. Ha, that is hilarious. As if you'd care what he told her. Me and my friend were two young Irish lads working on rebuilding the Canary Wharf Tower in London, which had been blown up by some other Irish lads a year earlier. But that's another story. It was like the Nakatomi Plaza. There were so many floors. If you didn't feel like working, you could just go to some random floor and hide out for a while. So me and my friend, both 18 years old, were hungover one morning. We went to the 23rd floor where there was a comfortable couch and we lay there smoking weed. Suddenly the English foreman appears and fires us on the spot. As he was walking away, he says that was taking the pee, lads. Unfortunately, there was somewhat of a misunderstanding here. What he meant was that our behavior was so bad we had crossed a line. However, in Ireland at that time, that was taking the pee meant I'm only joking. So we continued working for another 3 or 4 hours before he came back and said, I fired you this morning. What the heck are you still doing here? Brilliant. I'm Irish myself, so I'd have been confused by that. The summer between undergrad and graduate school, I was working in the customer service department of a Canadian department store. I got minimum wage and $1 extra an hour because I was the only person capable of answering the phones in English and French. I asked for a Saturday off to attend my sister's high school graduation. They said, what's more important to you, this job or the graduation? I said, well, the graduation actually. Particularly in light of the fact that I was starting my second degree in another city about 10 weeks later. Axed immediately. Well, good luck finding a bilingual Albertan willing to work for minimum wage +1, you stupid cocksuckers. Not me, but my brothers. He was valeting at a fancy beach club over the summer, and they hired a new kid from the area. The first car this new hire gets into, he backs into another car. My brother takes him to the side, tells him to calm down. The beach has insurance for this very reason. It's no big deal. Second car, he runs right into a parked car, which causes that car to smash into the one parked in front of it. My brother gives him $50 cash for the day of work, and tells him not to come back. This is why I don't ever do valet parking, ever. It is sometimes a hassle. Many hotels here only allow valet parking, but I hardly if ever allow family to drive my car, let alone some kid. I was 15, I think. I was a lifeguard at a subdivision pool. Being the new guy and the young kid, I worked every weekend. Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday day. I had already missed going to my grandparents a couple of times, and my parents were taking a vacation. I asked off and was told that I couldn't go. My dad basically said, you are going. I don't care. I told the boss this and she said, you still have to work. I left with my parents, and when I got back there were a dozen messages on my parents' answering machine saying that they couldn't open the pool because I wasn't there. She fired me 3 or 4 times that weekend. She was a bored housewife hired by the HOA to schedule the lifeguards who were mostly high school kids. She fired another for wearing a bikini. They didn't use her the next year, but by that point in time I was 16 and had a better job. They couldn't open the pool because I wasn't there. Not exactly a solid business plan, if it counts on a 15-year-old having 100% attendance to work. I was told that my position was being terminated, not just at our branch but company-wide, and was escorted back to my office to pack up my stuff. It wasn't dramatic or anything, but it was a shock. I didn't get to say goodbye to anybody. Just 2 days prior, I'd had my performance review and received glowing praise, while the entire time, they knew they'd be letting me go in a couple of days. That's what bothered me the most. I was in a pretty similar boat as you. Laid off very unexpectedly from my last job, after being told there would be no layoffs on multiple occasions. Put in a lot of work and overtime to help out the team. Taught me a valuable lesson in looking after yourself before anyone or anything else. Earlier this year I was working in a chicken processing plant. In the freezer section, we rotated through 4 tasks in this area. Making boxes, packing boxes, labeling boxes, and stacking boxes. Now, I had no problem with this. It was easy, if boring, work. What I did have a problem was labeling the boxes. We had to stand in such a way that I was slightly bent at the waist the entire time, and for some reason this was causing a nerve to get pinched in my back. Tons of pain. I toughed it out for 2 weeks. After that I couldn't take it anymore. I explained this to my boss. Told her that I'd gladly do a double on packing the chicken. Everyone hated that part. If I could just not label the boxes anymore. Or I'd take a double making boxes or stacking boxes. Didn't matter to me. Nope. Instead I was fired and told to vacate the property. They wouldn't even let me sit in the visitor area until my ride arrived. Ended up spending 30 minutes standing in 27F weather on the side of the road waiting on my ride. Whoa. Sounds like a lovely company. Probably good you got out then before you had a worse injury. Hope you are in better employment now. My first job out of college was for a very small dental insurance claims clearinghouse. The company had recently split from another company, whose name was on the software that all the dentist offices used, so that was the name they recognized. The two companies were basically fighting over their client base. So, my job was to call up all of their clients to remove the old software from the former partner and install the new janky butt crap they'd cobbled together since the split. My job alternated between calling up customers to install the new software and train them on it, troubleshoot the problems with the software and come up with workarounds. Typically during training calls, clients typically were finding out from me that the software was changing and I was supposed to insist that it was the same company, just different software. After almost a year of this, I was getting to a point where it just felt so awful to trudge my way into work because I knew I'd spend the day getting yelled at by clients who were upset that their routines were changing. I spent a lot of my downtime complaining to my friends over my personal email about how awful it was. Probably not the best thing to do, but I was young. Well, one day I come back from lunch and find the door to my office closed and my boss standing there waiting for me. He showed me the emails he'd printed out from my personal email account with portions of conversations highlighted that he didn't like. I never used any names or revealed company information, just my emotions while working there. He shoved the papers in my hands and said, "Explain this to me." I basically said I was just having trouble with the day-to-day grind, but he just responded with, "I think it's time for you to find something else. Get out of here." Fine by me. I probably should have left before it got to that point, but hindsight is 20/20 and all that. Ironically, I was having a really positive day at work. I had been there about 9 months and was starting to really hit my stride. I had made some really positive improvements with production process and workflow. The company was better for my time there. My work actually resulted in them being able to eliminate an entire position, saving the company 20-30k a year. Around 3 PM I'm called into our small conference room and told that I'm being fired for saying that I hate this f-king job and that I wasn't willing to go back into the warehouse and help out in the mornings. I was so completely caught off guard in the fact that this was coming from the owner. I knew there was nothing I could say, but still I defended myself by saying there was no way I would say that I hated my job. But still I was guided to my desk where I packed up my stuff in shock and headed out. I remained in contact with one of my co-workers and about a year later it came out that the same thing was tried on her. Turns out the operations manager was just a nut and having the ear of the owners she would straight up lie to them and got people fired. Why? I still don't know, but they knew this second co-worker much longer and better than myself. So when OM told them what co-worker supposedly was doing, they talked to her directly and determined that the OM was lying. She got canned this time instead. There are days I still wish they would have the balls to reach out to me and apologize. It's been 5 years now though, so that won't be happening. That experience really shook me and I can still see the effects to this day. That was my first real job out of college and I had decorated my little office with personal items, some drawings my daughter had done, etc. Now I refuse to decorate with anything personal and I keep the bare minimum of personal articles in my office. Getting canned and having to stand there and be watched while I had to collect up all of these personal artifacts was embarrassing and humiliating. I don't plan on being fired again, but if need be I can grab 1-2 things tops and walk to my car. Oh man, that sucks that it has slightly ruined things that way for you. Hopefully you like the job you are in now. I was 16 and it was my first job as a lifeguard in a neighborhood by my house. It was a very relaxed pool and we were never completely packed, and the kids that did frequent the pool seemed to like me. As a lifeguard I was often audited. The pool company's owner's son would come around and test our lifeguard skills and I passed twice that summer. Towards the beginning of August he came around while our pool was shut down because of thunder and rain. And I kid you not, they audited me while it was storming. Me, young and stupid, not wanting to lose my job, said okay, and in comes the owner's son's friend who probably weighed over 300 pounds. I'm 115. He jumped into the deep end and sank to the bottom and I was supposed to save him. I tried and I couldn't do it. He was dead weighting me and pretty sure he was pushing himself to the bottom. And rain was getting in my eyes and I was panicking because lightning came back up and I was fired on the spot. Got a call back later saying we'd love to have you if you took the training class again. Class was 10 hours, Friday Sunday equals 30 hours. And I said no and hung up. I forgot to pay for a hot dog I ate the previous day of work. I had the money to pay and I would have if they asked me to. It genuinely slipped my mind, but the manager was treating me as a serious thief. Kinda sucked, but the job was pretty terrible too. Retail usually is. That's so funny. As a chef, I am dying right now of laughter. A freaking hot dog. When we change a menu we eat everything in sight. New stuff to see if it's any good. Old stuff so it doesn't go bad. Just free food everywhere. Staff pizzas like daily. Fired over a freaking hot dog, lol. 17, still in high school. I was hired as a custodian for a hotel and was tasked to clean the pool. I was asked to backflush the system to clean the filters, which involves turning the pumps off and closing pipe valves. Well, there's about 20 valves, but only 3 needed to be closed. I thought I did them right, went to open the filter on the pump, and boom, the cap shot off and water started dumping out of the pump. The pool maintenance room is in the basement next to the pool, so it'll dump the whole pool if it's not stopped. I panicked and tried forcing the cap back on. Ran upstairs and through the hotel completed soaked. It was the weekend so my boss was off. Took him about 20 minutes to reach and get him to the hotel to help me with the system. In the end, there was probably a foot of water flooded the floor. It damaged the water heaters, got into the furnace, maintenance office, and phone system. Not sure on the damage cost, but it had to be in the hundreds of thousands, if not over $1 million. I was promptly fired by the hotel manager. To be fair, if they never taught you how to do it then that is their fault, not yours. I hated my last job. My co-workers were alright, but the guy over my department was an butthole. Well, the time finally comes after many years. I get an offer and of course I say yes. I had been plotting this moment. From my backpack, I pull a sympathy card that I'd been holding onto for a while. On the front, in memories, we find comfort. In time, we find peace. On the inside, so sorry for your loss. Sign my name. Add a date for $now and 14 days. Hand it to the bossman. Now I know for a fact that bossman would find it hilarious if this had happened to literally any other boss person in the company. But he had several sticks in his butt, so he fired me, told me hands off the computer, yelled a bit, insulted me several times, then walked me out the door. The company lawyer called in short order. We've accepted your 2 weeks notice. We don't require you to serve those 2 weeks, but you will get paid for it. Guess the whole you need to learn that your actions have consequences bulls that bossman tried to pull when I submitted my notice kind of backfired on him. Bossman in question has a habit of yelling at people in exit interviews. I like to think they didn't schedule one for me because he knew I wouldn't put up with it. We've accepted your 2 weeks notice. We don't require you to serve those 2 weeks, but you will get paid for it. This makes me so happy. I was 16 and working as a dishwasher at a summer tennis camp at an exclusive tennis club. The owner of the club was upset that I hadn't taken all the trash out. I explained to him that the dumpster was full and overflowing. He told me that I needed to climb into the dumpster and jump up and down on the trash to create more room in it. I said that I wouldn't do it. He told me that he wouldn't ask me to do anything that he wouldn't do himself, so I said fine. I want to see you climb into the dumpster and start jumping up and down. He fired me on the spot. Saying I wouldn't ask you to do anything I wouldn't do myself is a cool thing to do as a leader. It also only works if it's not transparently bulls. After graduating from grad school, I was having trouble finding jobs in my chosen career. I ended up applying to retail jobs just to get an income. I got hired at Old Navy, went through training, and even had 1 to 2 shifts. Then I got hired in my chosen career. Great. I went and told one of my managers, who was totally cool with it, understood, and even said I might be able to stay on part-time and help out during the holidays. Cool. Next shift, I have to tell the other manager that I got a new job. I just clocked in to start work, told this manager, and she tells me I can leave. I clock back out, wasn't even allowed to work that shift. I barely knew her, but just from the short interactions I had with her, she seemed like a bee. I was 21. My first real, full-time job was as an apprentice in an aircraft instrument repair shop. It was a small shop, just the owner, a bookkeeper and myself. I loved it and was really enjoying working with my hands and being around the aircraft all the time. Just as we were closing up one day, the owner got a call. A customer needed an instrument. Did we have it and could we send it out right away? We did have it, and since it was closing time, the owner told me to box up the part and label it. While I was doing that, he wrote out a check to UPS and left the amount blank. He gave me the check and told me that it was very important that the part get to UPS on time and to fill in the amount when I sent it. He also told me to be sure and bring back the receipt. The owner left me to lock up and take the package to UPS on the way home. I finished boxing up the part, locked up the shop. Yes, he trusted me with a key, and took the package to UPS. When I went to the counter, the guy weighed the package, printed out a ticket which got stuck on the box and pitched the box onto the belt. I watched the package disappear down the conveyor and reached in my pocket for the check the owner had given me. When I looked at the check, I realized that he had put the date, made the check payable to UPS, left the amount blank but had also failed to sign the check. I didn't have enough cash on me to pay for the shipping. The box had already gone down the belt. The owner had stressed that this was a good customer and the part had to get there the next day. The check was already filled out to UPS, so I went ahead and wrote in the amount, $4.12. This was 1977. Signed my boss's name on the check and handed it over to the guy behind the counter. He took the check. The package made it to the customer. The next day, when I arrived at work, I immediately told my boss, the owner, what had happened. He fired me on the spot for signing his name to the check and watched me while I packed up my tools and left. What a tool. When I was much younger, I worked at Taco Bell, my first job ever. Some girl came up to the counter and slammed her tray down onto the counter, screaming that we didn't know how to cook, that it was cold, it was so hot it was still steaming as it's on the counter, but okay. She cursed and yelled, so yeah, I did give just a little bit of attitude and told her, alright, I'll fix it, but you need to calm down. This is a family establishment, and this behavior is unacceptable. That's exactly how I put it, as I walked out to perform other tasks while her food was made once again and put on a gold platter for Her Royal Highness. I was talked by a family sitting and eating quietly who said something. Don't remember what they said, but had nothing to do with the yelling bee, and it made me laugh. A few days later, the district manager calls and demands to speak with me in his office. Apparently the bee who threw the huge fit, even after receiving her food like 3 different times even though it was fine, went and told my manager that me and the family were making fun of her and laughing at her. Apparently I called her crazy and all kinds of crap. It just so happened that the same family was there that day too, and as he was yelling at me, the mom walked over and told the manager that no, we had said nothing about the crazy woman. We did not laugh at her, and she told him she told me a joke that made me laugh. Nope. Still fired. What was neat though is that the family, who had been regulars for years, stood up and demanded a refund, and they left. They were great. They even asked me to join them at a different restaurant for lunch. The customer is not always freaking right. That's why nowadays, I work in manufacturing and without public interaction. I worked in retail for like 3 weeks and can confirm customers are the dumbest people in the world. I got fired from Borders because the person that was covering for me while I was on vacation got fired. What's even more messed up, I didn't even find out directly from them. Jose's girlfriend, she also worked there, texted me saying, "Hey Jose got fired and you should probably call them because they have been expecting you." I called and store manager was like, "Yes, you're terminated. You can come and pick up your last check." I didn't even bother arguing because I was gonna give my 2 weeks notice when I got back anyway because I was sick of their bulls. Joke's on them. They went out of business. Worked in a stockroom of a large cheap clothing company. I was around 15/16 I think. It was the most boring mint-killing job involving moving boxes, unpacking boxes, and loading trucks, packing boxes, boxes and more boxes. It was mostly teenagers working to earn some pocket money. You try stuff to make the shift go faster. I brought my MP3 player one day so I could listen to some music through headphones, but that wasn't allowed. So the intercom radio kept playing the same songs over and over. I think it was Scissor Sisters, "I Don't Feel Like Dancing," and James Morrison, "You Give Me Something." Anyways, one early Saturday morning shift I was working with a colleague my age. We had to unpack a load of carts with boxes. You know how kids are. We started messing around, throwing the boxes to each other like volleyballs. A manager walked by and sent us to his office. We were told to leave and to not come back. It was a good day. I worked there for 3 months and I hated every second of it. Box volleyball is a good reason to get fired. As a backpacker in Australia around 2005-06 got a job working for a motivational speaker life coach predatory fraudster. Basically people would come to his free session on a Saturday and then, if they were interested, would leave their number for people like me to call them back and try to sell the paid weekend to them. Our script included things like how to advise people who said they couldn't afford it on how they could use their social welfare payments to pay for it. Really scummy. Anyway, on one call a guy straight up asked me if this fella was a fraud. I said, "Between you and me, I think he is." Just as the supervisor walked past, she tapped me on the shoulder and whispered, "Make that your last call." Hung up and left. Really wish I could remember his name. Michael something. Scumbag. Weirdest thing about the whole experience was that the workshop was held in a massive arena and we were in the main dressing room all week, but had to leave on the weekend because Alice Cooper was playing and needed the dressing room. We were moved to a hospitality suite near the stage so we're trying to sell this Bulls course with Alice Cooper blasting out in the background. Operations manager here. On the day of the Christmas dinner for the company, I texted one of the new employees who didn't show up at the restaurant we were having dinner at. This new employee was with us for 2 months and was hired even after having bad reviews from previous employees, but still thought I will give him a chance because we were in a pinch. His previous employer said he has issues getting to work or getting to work on time. He had no driver license, so I asked one of the other employees with company vehicle to pick him up in the morning, and sometime he literally had to wake him up. Coming back to the day of the Christmas dinner, he replied back saying that he will need roughly 38% raise from his current salary, otherwise he is quitting, because this other company offered him a job. I thanked him for his time with us and enjoyed rest of my evening. Couple of months later he called begging for his job back, and you all know what my answer was. One year I was working at a summer camp. It was my first year but a bunch of people had been going for years. This year it was a brand new director and she was useless, regularly telling us she was too busy to do her job. Often told us that if she did the hiring she would have gotten good employees. Told people that we can't get mad at kids and needed to use positive reinforcement, then when they got in trouble just took them away and did nothing. A completely useless woman. There was an incident the day before this where one kid got 3 fingers like claws and scratched another while transitioning to the afternoon care, when the day staff were supposed to go to the office and plan activities for the next day. We were all inside when this happens and so was the director who was actually supposed to be helping outside. Our director and regional manager come out the next day and give written warnings to a bunch of people for being inside during out planning time. One of the 4 guys working at our camp, 37 employees, 4 were male including me, stands up and says it's crap that we get written warnings for doing what we were told during training, but they didn't care, they wanted a scapegoat. He got angry and fired in the spot for speaking up against our director, who was fired 3 weeks later for sucking at a job. In high school my friend, whose nickname was Weed, was scratching his balls with his hand down inside his pants while flipping burgers at MCD's. The manager stepped around the corner, saw him and fired him in seconds. Good. Not me, but I witnessed it. Guy not only fired, but they had cops on site to escort him out. He was let go for a multitude of reasons. 1. Clocked in via phone, proceeds to show up 1 hour after his shift starts, then leaves hour early and clocks out via phone. 2. New access codes to vending machines, so he was stealing change out of them. Not all of it, but enough for discrepancies to be noticed. 3. Put paper towels on light bulbs in the bathroom. Stuffed paper towels down sink in break room, so he could be the hero who noticed this stuff prior to it causing a disaster. 4. General disrespect of fellow employees. 5. Taking advantage of lax OT policies and not actually working the OT. This just happened. Was working for a small startup with an absolute sea of a boss. He would yell, demand 110% from his employees while he could barely afford to pay us. Paychecks were never on time, and would constantly demean me. He was an all-around misogynist. I talked back one time. He asked me, "How often are you on time to work?" I responded, "How often do we get paid on time?" And the next day he texted me to bring my keycard and keys to work and fired me. Good riddance. I've never felt better. It seriously felt like I was released from prison. I was already quitting. Put in my 30 days when working for an IT consulting firm, while I was allocated to work in a financial institution. I hated it there, had been there for 3 months, but I had been working for the consulting firm for 1.5 and got a much better offer to move up to project management, which was an amazing step for me. The financial institution was notified that I had put in my 30 days during my lunch hour by the consulting firm. I was told I could leave when I came back from lunch. The consulting firm let me go as well since they wouldn't need me for anything else just for those 30 days. Which was cool. I called my new boss and he told me I could start sooner if I wanted to. Took a 1-week vacation between jobs and then started. I saw someone get fired on the spot because he said he wanted to rage FCK a co-worker of ours. He was an idiot. I've never been fired for anything, laid off since they were closing a department though, but I got someone fired on the spot. As a kid I went to the library on my bike and it got stolen. Months later I see it in the back of a Friendly's near the employee parking. I called the police since I had already filed a report with them. Easy to identify since it had some pretty unique features like a custom valve cap I found once and the handbrake on the left side didn't work. Police asked the manager if he knew who came in on the bike and he said it was one of his cooks. They informed him it was stolen from me, so the manager called him over and berated him pretty badly while they put cuffs on him and promised to call all the other local restaurants so they don't hire him. Pretty sure he said, "I knew you were a freaking loser, but stealing a kid's bike, really? You're like 25, you prick." I think he ended up getting community service. I worked in a medical office, trying to be vague about specialty, and the doctor was doing horrifically illegal things that were putting patients at risk for damages and disease. Things like having unlicensed employees performing duties that they shouldn't and not practicing proper hand-washing instrument sterilization act. Not to mention the doctor was rude and would frequently yell at staff. During my employment I brought attention to things that were being done and confronted the doctor in front of the rest of the staff. She fired me on the spot. I had been keeping record of infractions as they were revealed. A lot of the more awful things were hush-hush and turned the office into the Attorney General in my state. Just a few weeks ago I found out that the doctor has been telling people that I was fired for trying to recruit people into a cult. I'm an atheist. I'm in the same cult. Not me, but a person who worked with me. My job had people come and go like it was a drive-through. We had one guy who was down that same path. He came in and started cutting the pizzas. I'm helping him and he's a nice guy. Skip a couple of weeks and this guy is a master. Even during rush he still has time to pick up orders. Manager comes in. Ask him how he's liking his job. He says that he's glad that he works here. Manager fires him on the spot. Next guy comes and it continues in the cycle. I was working in a USPS priority shipping center during Christmas break from college back in 02 feet. It's fairly brutal work, tossing packages non-stop for the entire 8-hour shift from 10 PM to 6 AM. I know, it's not a gulag or anything, but to a spoiled 20-year-old at the time, I recall hating it. So there's this massive conveyor belt structure that basically runs the entire length of this titanic warehouse. It's huge, kid, and they would store a ton of carts and other miscellaneous junk under there for storage. So, naturally, I took to hiding out underneath it whenever the opportunity arrived. Pretty crappy thing to do, but alas, was young and foolish. This went on for a good week when I decided to get bold and took to laying down inside a pushcart and covered myself up for what I had hoped would be a brief nap. It's loud and a little cold, so I thought I'd be good. But nope. Slept for a good 4 hours only to awaken to a search party sent out to see if I had died under the belt. The boss applauded my bold action but showed me the door all the same. I was a contractor for the USPS distribution centers all over the country. In many of them, they have skywalks that are multiple levels and span the entire quarter-mile long building. Many of them have conveyor belts that are no longer in use. I frequently found nests that workers had made to hide out in, usually littered with magazines, food wrappers, and empty soda bottles. Did not happen to me, but I was involved. At a place I worked, people came to me saying someone was making obscene comments about my body, and they told HR about it, so when I got called in, I said, well, yeah, that makes me uncomfortable, and the person got fired on the spot. It was a huge deal because everyone knew about it. I had only been working there for a little less than a year and they had been there for over 10. Not me, but my co-worker at Subway got fired after giving her friend free food and paying for it immediately afterwards. I know it's semantics, but couldn't they have given their friend money to buy the food? Didn't push the crappy store credit cards enough. Was pulled off the till by a manager and he asked why I didn't try to sign the customer up for a card. He was watching us. I told them the customers don't want them, or should we push them? If they want them, they will ask. I was pulled into the office and fired or laid off because they did not need extra staff and I was a problem child, as he worded it. Cause screw actual customer service and making sure the store doesn't look like a war zone. Look, WHO's laughing now, Sears. Last time I was at Sears, I stood in line for 10 minutes while a clerk tried to get someone to take the rewards card. Not even a credit card. Perfect. This just happened to me in September. I was a marketing manager at a fairly large digital advertising agency. I showed up to work on Wednesday at the same time I always did. Nothing out of the ordinary. My direct manager from the office up north was in for a strategy meeting. He and I sat down with my team and did some Q2 number reviews, goal setting, strategy for the remainder of 2018. Talked about the pros and cons and how hopeful and optimistic he was. Then it was back to work as usual. About 2 hours later, he calls me into the conference room. I bring my laptop to take notes and figure we are going to go over more numbers or something. I look to my right at the end of the long conference room table and the SVP of operations is sitting there, albeit with an uncomfortable, scared look on his face. They tell me to close the door. My manager, we decided today is your last day. Didn't really give me any good reason why, but I found out it was a few days before earnings call and they had missed their projected quarter numbers and I was the most expensive employee on the team. Capital F. Mom, brother and I were at Olive Garden about 20 years ago. We had the worst waiter in the history of the world. He was outrageously rude to the point of being abusive to us. At the end of the dinner, my mom left him a dime for a tip, and as we were leaving, the waiter threw the dime at my mom. I was a little kid, otherwise I would have probably at least attempted to defend her. Waiter's boss saw the dime throw and fired the waiter on the spot. Everyone has a bad day, but that guy was just a prick. I was 16. It was my first job. I had landed a nice IT help desk job, answering phones, logging jobs, fixing internet, crap like that. 6 weeks of unpaid training and 6 months of working hard landed me with my own office and a weird medley of every job there was to have. Only the CEO and I had our own offices. I wasn't paid more. I wasn't given any more recognition, and they actually had the balls to ask if I could work Tuesday, Friday on a lower pay. I got Mondays off from school. They wanted me to work Monday to Friday, the 8th of August on a $8 HR pay, so I said no and was fired instantly in front of 12 other co-workers. Awkward. A dodge a bullet. You have been visited by the healthy spirit of exercise. Boy, you will burn all calories today. If you comment blessed be the health hound, like and subscribe, you magnificent person.